and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight we're joined by Washington Times reporter and the author of a new book, Lawless Lawfare, tipping the scales of justice to get Trump and destroy MAGA. We've heard that before. Alex Swoyer. Alex, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Look, you're a journalist, an attorney, a legal analyst, and I'm thinking back, Alex, to about a year ago when all of this kind of was coming to a head with all of the trials against my father-in-law. But take me back to the beginning when you, with all of those different titles and different hats, started seeing all of this legal, lawfare really unfold for President Trump. What were you thinking about it? Because it was unprecedented then. We've never seen anything like it, and I hope we never see anything like it ever again.
Yeah, you're right. I hope that's exactly one reason why I wrote the book. I hope we never have to see what we saw happen to your father-in-law again. But I think for me, when I talk about the book and where I start is I talk about the cost of lawfare, and it gets personal. I spoke to you. Don Jr. had spoke about the impact with the family. And then the first chapter, I really go to Russia, where the special counsel probe, I covered Congress in 2017, 2018, and, I felt like I stood outside of a closed-door hearing with Adam Schiff every day, and all he did was come out and promise that there was going to be some sort of Russia collusion. Of course, that never came to be. He has yet to answer for that, even though I know that there's been bar complaints filed against him for his behavior. That's, I think, exactly where it started. It started with special counsels. It then graduated into impeachments. And then, unfortunately, from there, indictments. And when I watched it snowball, I was always troubled by going into a courtroom and looking at a judge and seeing who appointed that judge and being kind of able to tell how the case would play out.
Yep.
But that became even more evident with your father-in-law. And it's truly un-American. It threatens the separation of powers. And I thought something needed to be done about it. Someone needed to chronicleize everything that's happened, what we've seen. And that's what I hoped this book would do. And in America, we're supposed to defeat our opponents in fair elections at the ballot box, not try to silence them and jail them. And unfortunately, that was what 2024 was about.
Yeah, well, you're right to go all the way back. And I love that you did that. And by the way, it was such an honor to talk to you and let you kind of interview me for this book, because I never, as we just said, want any other president or any person, quite frankly, in the United States of America to ever have to go through what my father-in-law has gone through, and as kind of, collateral damage, our entire family has had to go through. So I'm so glad you wrote this book. But take me back for a second to old Adam Schiff. I'm glad you brought this character up, because this is one of the people. Somebody wrote into my Q&A show and asked me if there was one person on Joe Biden's pardon list who you would like to interview for your show. Who would it be, and what would you ask that person? And I immediately said, you know who I want to talk to? I want to talk to Adam Schiff. Because, Alex, every chance this guy got, he was jumping right in front of a camera. You couldn't get him.
Show.
Every Sunday show, every radio show, anywhere anyone would give him a second to say he had the smoking gun. And you're right, those closed door meetings to make people think, God, there must be so much here that we, the people, are going to find out at some point. To your point, we still, Alex, haven't heard anything from Adam Schiff that would ever tie Donald Trump or our campaign to Russia. Is that correct?
Right. That is correct. And the other part of this that I explore in the book is that any lawyer, really, who was looking to represent your father-in-law or anyone in the Trump inner circle who was caught up in lawfare, even like I talk about a couple out in Texas that had Democrats in big law come after them for counter-protesting the Biden bus. They all went through the same. The lawyers get complaints about them, like Ken Paxton, for example, Sidney Powell. They were all facing disbarment. And one of the things that was John Eastman said to me, he was like, I've had to go to all these hearings, but Adam Schiff, I know he has a complaint against him and he hasn't had to go to any.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, these are the people, someone who has the audacity to go out there and spew the kind of just straight trash, as far as I'm concerned, that Adam Schiff did, knowing he knew Alex the whole time. He never had a smoking gun. He never had anything, because none of us did anything wrong. Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong. No one from our campaign did anything wrong. He cost the American taxpayers tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Don't forget, we had to investigate the whole thing, right?
Million. I have that in the book. So
Yeah.
I think it was like 32 million, and then the John Durham probe after that to try to look back at the origins, all the mistakes that was made. That it was 40 million or so on these special counsel probes, all looking really at Russia.
Yeah, and it was all hogwash, to say it very nicely. And I'm glad you looked into the other, I'll say, collateral damage again surrounding President Trump, because the number of people who, were on our campaign in 2016, a lot of these people either volunteered their time or made very little money to work on a campaign. You don't get rich working on a presidential campaign like as a junior staffer, right?
You don't go into government to.
No.
Well, you're not supposed to go into government to get rich.
Some do, but that's a whole nother book that you got to write. But all of these people had to go to court, had to go in front of Congress, had to go defend themselves against things that never even happened. And a lot of them, it damaged them for the rest of their lives. It destroyed people. You're right. And someone ought to be held accountable. So look, I don't know what the story is with the auto-pinned pardons and whatnot. I know that Adam Schiff thinks it's sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Now, I'll tell you what, I don't get vengeful against people, and I don't target people usually. Adam Schiff was so disturbing, the way he went out of his way to lie to the American people. And Alex, people are still letting this guy on TV. It is mind-boggling to me. But
that's the other part of the problem is the media, which you just hit on. There's no accountability. After they saw that he was unable to deliver on everything he said, they're still continuing to interview him. They still run with questions about Russia. We even saw it during the last election. And that was one of the most troubling things, I think, from the research I did on this book, was some of the media aspect to it. When I'm a thorough believer in the First Amendment and political speech. And when I was looking at what your father-in-law endured, so the 4 indictments came down in the span of like 4 months. And he, of course, had all these gag orders, and the criminal court gag orders trouble me because I think if anyone should be able to speak freely in our country, it should be a defendant looking at potentially, losing their liberty, going behind bars. And but that was not afforded to your father-in-law. And the media, nobody challenged this. It was like, you see...
They championed it. Alex, they cheered it on for the most part. They thought it was great.
Where in the past, press would, petition for more access, petition for more information from the defense, and that was just missing. And there was one New York blogger that did take a request all the way to the Supreme Court. It was denied, but I will give it to that one podcaster, essentially. But that was one disappointment. The other one was Media Research Center did a really, really good job of tracking the coverage of these cases. And one of the most troubling ones I saw was Fani Willis in Fulton County, Georgia. ABC and CBS did about 99 stories about her case against your father-in-law. And in those 99 stories, I will probably not surprise you that they never once identified her as a Democrat. Now, she was running for re-election. She was actually running for re-election at the time. I think it's journalistic malpractice not to even note that, And that was, I think, part of the big problem where this was allowed to snowball so much, was the media was just hand in hand in this narrative.
Okay, listen, I want to get back into all of that, but first I've got to tell you about Strong Cell. Strong Cell is a great tasting daily supplement drink in a 2-ounce sip, packed with clean, healthy ingredients, and this is the piece you need to hear, NADH. This is one of the most powerful nutrients your body can get. Your cells need it to not just survive, but to thrive. And the reality is, as we age, our cellular health starts to break down. That can mean a lot of different things. It can mean low energy, brain fog, different aging-related issues. With Strong Cell, your cells can get what they need and your entire body benefits. We're talking about natural, sustained energy, mental clarity, and that feeling of being recharged from the inside out. Here's the truth. Every vital organ in your body runs on healthy cells. And if your cells aren't working, you aren't either. Go to trystrongcell.com and learn more about how Strong Cell can help you feel like you again. That's trystrongcell.com, trystrongcell.com, and use discount code Lara at checkout to save 20%. Mike Lindell and MyPillow employees want to thank my listeners for all of your continued support. Mike has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of their life, and he didn't stop by creating the best pillow. He's also created the best bed sheets ever. Mike is offering the best deal on his Percale bed sheets. You can get a set for as low as $24.98. The MyPillow Percale sheets are breathable and have a cool, crisp feel. They have deep pockets to fit over any mattress, and they look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, which is crucial for my busy schedule. Also, for a limited time, when your order is over $100, you will receive $100 in free digital gifts. Go to MyPillow.com and use promo code TRUMP to receive the MyPillow Percale sheets for as low as $24.98. Order now or call 800-624-3945 and use promo code TRUMP. And then you come to kind of where we are today, where we just saw, a week ago, the Supreme Court, speaking of, come back with a decision that these federal court judges cannot, block the will of the president to execute the will of the people by, some of his executive orders. You had all of these, it was like 5 federal court judges and 5 districts trying to basically rule for the country. So I feel good that we've seen that happen. But in the wake of all of this and after writing this book and pouring yourself into this, where do you think we stand right now? What do you think kind of going forward are going to be the biggest challenges facing our judicial system?
Well, yeah, so the lawfare now that the Trump administration is facing is unprecedented. The Article 3 Foundation actually has an interesting chart. It's like 266 lawsuits. That's not even all of them, but they've been chronicalizing it, and you can go and you can click and access the docket and see what the judge is doing, which I think is good. It gives the American people somewhere to go for some accountability and some tracking. But I think that ruling will be good. Now, the liberal advocates, they don't have, 5 chances to get a nationwide injunction. They're only going to have one. They're going to have a one chance at a class action if they can get class certification. The other aspect is House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan spoke to me for the book as well. And he talked about legislation that was being pushed about allowing politicians, if they're in this type of situation, to be able to remove cases from state court to federal court, and allowing a defendant to have more option when they're in that type of situation to choose their venue, which was a large part of the problem with what happened in 2024. Right. If the hush money trial was brought anywhere else, even like a purple county next door, the verdict would have been completely different.
Yeah, and not, of course, you had these activist judges, like Judge Merchan, whose daughter was working for the Democrat Party and was one of their big fundraisers and all involved in that. It's,
he donated to your father-in-law's opponent. And even if it's small dollars, like journalists are supposed to go out of their way not to have money go places where it could have a conflict of interest, let alone a judge. So,
what we know for sure from working on now 3 presidential campaigns, I can tell you is that even if someone donates $1 to a candidate, they are far more likely to come out and actually physically go vote for that candidate. You are literally bought in. So the idea, I don't care if Merchan donated $15 or $15,000, it's still money donated, and it shows you where your allegiance lies. And
absolutely.
You should never have a conflict of interest like that. No. Period. So, to kind of move forward, where do you think, what kind of reforms, if any, do you think would be beneficial to prevent this kind of lawfare from happening again, to ever see? I don't want it to happen to anybody, Republican, Democrat, Independent. Right. No one in America should have to deal with this.
Well, I think I heard a lot from different people when I was interviewing them for the book. General Michael Flynn is, ready to clean house at CIA. He says it just really needs to be emptied and start from the ground up. Steve Bannon wanted all public hearings. He wanted everything to be aired out in the open. If you're not going to have criminal charges, at least have congressional hearings where the American people get some answers. Governor Rod Blagojevich, he told me something very, very interesting, a good idea, I thought. He said that he was hoping maybe President Trump would form maybe a bipartisan commission and have people like him and others sit on there to study about what they can do to put some sort of limits on allowing anything like this to happen again. It should never happen. And thankfully, the American people saw through it. I talked to a pollster, Robert Cahaley, about how the lawsuits were playing throughout the campaign, and he was like, it was basically voters weren't familiar with the word lawfare, but they understood the weaponization of the courts, and they didn't like it.
The irony, of course, of all of this, Alex, is that so much of what was very clearly intended to thwart the campaign and the chances of President Trump to become president again actually in some ways backfired, right? And I think, yeah, it really felt like it worked in his favor in some crazy way. I don't know that any other person, though, would ever have been afforded that, right? I think that he is a very unique person for a unique time. And look, I will always say that I kind of feel like the past 4 years, as tough as they were in so many respects for the country to get through, see inflation sky high, the open border, the weakened America on the world stage, all the things that we saw happen. And I, no one more so than anyone in our family, wanted to see Donald Trump in office for 2 consecutive terms. But I always say I kind of feel like it was needed, the 4 years for him, so that he could accomplish what he is right now. But in some ways, we were right on the verge of something like all of this happening. And I feel like he was the person who could expose it, who, despite gag orders, like you just talked about, was able to get the word out about this and caution America. You mentioned in your book that we don't want history to repeat itself. And I feel like there's so much that you can make of that. What do you hope after people read your book, they take away so that we don't see history repeat itself again?
Well, 2 things. One, as Trump supporters, I don't want them to be silenced. I don't want them to be intimidated. The couple I mentioned out in Texas, that was one of the things. Like, they literally showed up for a counter protest and then had Big Law and Democrats come after them with the Ku Klux Klan Act, said they interfered with the right to vote. They had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is just your average couple, out in middle America, to defend their First Amendment right. And they went to trial and they won. But now they're trying to get their attorney's fees back and collect, and that's hard. So I don't want people to be silenced. I want them to look at what your father-in-law did and fight. I think he might have been the only man that could withstand everything that was thrown at him. But that's one aspect. The other is, I'm happy that the voters did not reward the Democratic Party behavior that we saw in 2024. And that's, I think, going forward is we have to be able to shut this down. Even if you see it from one of your own candidates, you have to speak up, you have to shut it down, you have to vote and defeat your politicians at the ballot box, not try to jail them or lock them up or gag them.
It seems so basic, Alex. It seems very easy.
Seems like something the founders figured out.
Yeah. That's sort of how this country is supposed to run. If anybody wants to check out the book, where can they find it and where can they keep up with what you have going on?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target, and you can follow me at the Washington Times. We're following all the court cases there, in and out of the Supreme Court, federal courts. You can go to WashingtonTimes.com and we'll have it.
Amazing. Well, thank you for writing this book and making sure that we don't forget, really in so many ways, how we almost lost our country. If this sort of thing happens, we're no better than a communist country.
Well,
so
and thank you for sharing your family story with me, and thank you for your family for continuing to fight.
Oh, you got it. Thank you very much. All right, Alex, we appreciate you. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View. And I won't back down.